Tick tack, it's my clock telling me I should get up.
Hi, and welcome to The Conscious Loop, where woo-woo and the real world collide. I'm your host, Katrina DeAngelis. Join me as we explore what it looks like to live consciously almost always. Each episode, we dive into transforming mindsets and shifting paradigms through topics such as developing self-awareness, living authentically, communication, strengthening relationships, and leading from the inside out. If you're ready to break out of your unconscious loops and discover what else is possible, you came to the right place. You ready? Let's dive in. Hello, beautiful human, and welcome back to The Conscious Loop. I'm so excited to welcome my dear friend Danielle Nicole Prizer onto the show. She is also a life coach and a beautiful human, a source and force of resilience and compassion. She embodies true heart, and I will never forget the first time I met her. The first word that came to mind was, what a beautiful, deep, loving, compassionate person. Danielle's a certified transformational life coach, keynote speaker, and meditation instructor. She began her journey coaching 10 years ago during her own medical mystery and has since healed her mind and body. She hopes her warmth and story invite others to heal themselves. Dani is also the president and founder of One Special World, a nonprofit for special needs advocacy, and she is impassioned by human connection, communal healing, learning, growth, writing, travel, and so much more. May our conversation together inspire you to feel your leadership and reclaim your conscious narrative. Just a few things that Dani and I chat about today are really deconstructing some of her unconscious loops and patterns around being alone and not being able to receive support. So Dani shares her own journey with those unconscious loops and how she brings conscious awareness and intention to that on a daily basis to rewire that story and really live in a more conscious loop. One of the things that I loved so much about my conversation with Dani is really just bringing this awareness to the human element. You know, we so often hear people talk about being resilient or leverage your strengths, and that's not always possible. In the human experience, yes, you can be resilient, and it also doesn't mean that you're not going to have a breakdown. You can be compassionate, and it also doesn't mean that you're going to not say no or show up at maybe less than your best at times. And so really addressing the human component of your strengths, of having boundaries, of stumbling along the way and what that journey really looks like. So I'm excited for this one. I hope that you like it as much as I do, and let's dive right in. All right. Hello, Dani.
Hello. So good to be here.
So good to have you. I'm so excited for today's conversation. Although I wish we were recording 2 hours ago because that's how long we've been talking for, and it's been amazing as always. For those of you who don't know, Dani and I went through our coaching certification together. Just a lot of amazing tools and conversations and just beautiful relationships and coaching ourselves really through that process, which was really nice. And so I'm excited to have her here on the show so that you can get to hear some of her wisdom as well and some of the beauty that she has to share with the world. So welcoming Dani.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's such an honor to be here with you. And truly, as your audience already knows, you embody such wisdom, love, and leadership. And to be in space and have a conversation and see what beauty we can co-create is just so exciting. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, to get us kicked off, I wanted to ask you this question. I've been having a lot of conversations around this lately, and so I'm excited to get your perspective on it. What does leadership mean to you, and how does that show up in your daily life?
I love that. I think leadership means going first and going forward. And what that looks like for me is first internal leadership, right? Like, what do I really need and want in this moment? And how can I take the next loving step towards that? And that in turn is being a self-leader in my experience. And then I think in terms of others, you know, I've been in different hats and different roles that are quote unquote leader, right? CEO, founder, whatever it be. But my truth in leadership is looking at the most empowered version of the person I'm speaking with and seeing them as a leader and inviting them into their magic, their self-direction, and their perspective. It's equal ground. It's not the hierarchy of like leader and student or student and teacher and student. It's wow, like this is their magic and this is my magic. And how can we co-create even more magic?
I love that, especially the co-creation aspect, and just, how leadership to you is, and I so resonate with this. It's like inviting somebody else's best self forward as well. And I think, hierarchical leadership is really a thing of the past and maybe a past definition of it. And lately it's becoming, it's reworking itself. And even when I think about my corporate clients that I speak to, we're redefining the term leadership, because when people do hear leadership, they still kind of think of that hierarchy. And rather than taking away that term, which is something that has been discussed within like the corporate world of maybe we don't say the term leadership anymore, or like leadership program, because it implies that you are in this position of power or leadership. Rather than taking away that word, like how do we just redefine it? Mm-hmm. And I love your definition of it.
Thank you.
Creation aspect and really calling people forward into their leadership. So thank you.
I love that. No, thank you so much. And I have something to add to that, where it's like, rather than power over, it's power with. It's the empowered together. And I think if we think of outside of the corporate structure, like villagers or people that still live in community, right? There's not one leader. Maybe in some there are, but there is the medicine person, the lawyer, whatever they call themselves type person, the doctor, the healer, and all of them are leaders and all of them co-create the beauty of the community. And I think if we can apply that rather to corporate or to whatever structure of the world we are looking to integrate, it's not one is better than the other, one is more learned than the other. It's everyone has their own learnings, their own skills, their own gifts. And how can we make space for everyone to bring that? Because the power of togetherness is truly remarkable. At my nonprofit, the slogan is the strongest force is the power of togetherness. And it truly is demonstrated within all areas of leadership, and all people are leaders in that way.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm like, yes. We need to rewrite this definition of leadership. And I love that. And also, one thing that comes to mind there as well, and is really beautiful that you just shared, is inviting, in a community aspect, you have the healer, you have the doctors, you have, the gatherers of food, you have the people that, bring everyone together. There's all these like different archetypes and different ways that you can lead. And a part of that is figuring out who you are inside and how you can give more of that to yourself and others and the world. And I think most people are on that journey of figuring out what is their authenticity, like what is their archetype, how can they best lead in their own grounded and authentic voice and leadership brand. And so I'm curious, what are some of the ways in which you've gone about figuring that out for yourself and really getting stronger in your own voice and your own version of leadership, and how you bring your magic and creativity and all of that to the world? What did your journey look like?
So beautiful. And so I think some of it happened subconsciously and some of it happened consciously. So first I'll speak to my own journey, and then I'll speak to how I would help somebody step into their leadership journey. For me, I was lovingly born to a beautiful family where everyone had different needs. And very quickly, I became the advocate of my elder brother who has special needs. It's just us two, and he's my angel. But I knew that I wanted to be an advocate. I wanted to be a voice. I wanted to really speak for what I believed in and who I believed in, and protect those who, for lack of better words, couldn't necessarily protect themselves. So my leadership right away was being the helper, being the one to stand in front and speak for. And sometimes, it went into overdoing it so people that could do it for themselves. And that was a journey in and of itself, but really being the voice and being the support and being the rock. And then as I grew older, I realized, how can I internalize these gifts and really do it for myself? Because my worth started to come from, who can I help? Who can I stand up for? Who can I advocate for? How am I needed, right? What happens when I'm not needed? So then I was like, okay, first and foremost, like, let's turn the dial inward and see, like, how can I be my own rock, my own leader, my own supporter, and really tune into what it is that I'm meant to share and create for myself and for this world, but not in service to advocating or being there for other in that second. And I think with that, I also learned that seeing other people as leaders, as their most empowered self, right? My brother does have certain needs where he does need some level of advocacy and protection, but not everyone is my brother. And can I see them as they need themselves? And how can I awaken that within them so that they rely on themselves rather than me or their friend or their partner to some degree? And I think when it comes to leadership, I pivoted from special needs advocacy, and I have a nonprofit and working in that space, to really just wanting people to live their best life. I fought for my life medically and also had a mental health journey. And I was so impassioned by then really having the strong desire to be here and to create that and wanting to invite others to do that. So my journey really started as being the younger but older sibling to somebody who has different needs, and being in a home where my parents also had specific needs. And I felt like I needed to be the one for others, and then transitioned into being the one for myself and inspiring others to do that for themselves. And then I think in terms of leadership for others, right? It's getting to know, like, who am I? What are my strengths? What are my gifts? What are my growth points? What lights me up? What energizes me? What drains me? And I think the quintessential, or not quintessential rather, but stereotypical leader may be extroverted and loud and have more alpha energy. But the truth is that there's space for everyone, right? The person who's more introverted and can listen and reflect and really deepen into what is around before extrovertedly sharing has leadership gifts. So with clients, if they're ready to step into their leadership, I would invite them to look at those questions, to do some of the personality tests like the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs. But all of these labels are not to put us in boxes, but rather to give us autonomy and like having some level of formality of, wow, like this is where I shine. This is what my life experience has allowed me to contribute to the world. And there's no right, wrong, good, bad, better. There's just all different angles. And for the person that's listening who does feel more extroverted and an external processor, and somebody who maybe was naturally in roles where they were quote unquote in charge, then okay, we're in the stereotypical box. But for the people that are also leaders, that are also looking to invigorate what's within themselves and their soul, there's space for all. And it comes with first knowing ourselves and our gifts.
Wow, that is so beautiful and such a lovely message to send people as well, right? Everyone is a leader, and it is about finding that authenticity and what leading looks like for you, and what your strengths are, what your gifts are, and how you can share more of that with the world. And you mentioned, tests, like kind of like personality tests and things like that. And one thing that came to mind is for me, I work with the one called the SDI, which is a strengths-based and motivation-based assessment. And every strength, right? So when you talk about your journey and being very supportive, has a shadow side, we'll call it, but the shadow side isn't a weakness. Like a lot of people think it's like the opposite of a strength is a weakness. The shadow aspect is almost when the strength is being overdone. And you mentioned a part of your journey was figuring out not everyone is your brother, right? Not everyone might not need that support or be supported in that way. And somebody who is very supportive can often be over supportive in scenarios. And then there's that journey of figuring out where is that balance and how do I set those boundaries? Another example for, because everyone has different strengths, is confidence, right? Confidence is one that is a strength. And when we see confidence overdone, or maybe we don't use confidence as much, it can be seen as overly assertive or aggressive, right? And underneath that behavior is always a strength. There's always a positive intent, but we see the impact. So over supportive, overbearing, or very social and extroverted, overdone can be maybe intrusive to somebody who's less social. And so I always encourage people, think about the strengths within yourself, and then some of the conflicts that come up along the way. Is there a possibility that a strength is being overdone? And when you are in conflict with somebody else because of their behavior, is it also maybe because there's a strength that's being overdone? And I want to ask you kind of around the boundaries piece, what an example would be for you in your journey? Because I'm laughing because I'm thinking of a recent time actually when in conversation, with my partner, one of my strengths is perspective. And taking a step back and seeing the bird's eye view and seeing how everything is interconnected, right? Or seeing somebody else's perspective. That's not always helpful when somebody just wants to vent and be like, I'm irritated, I'm angry, la, la, la. And then I instantly go into like, well, what about this perspective, or what might be going on in their mind? And that's not very helpful. And so, that's part of my journey in navigating that balance between using my strengths at the right time and to the right degree, turning them up when I need to, turning them down when I need to, borrowing another strength, and really just being strong in my boundary of I don't need to over give or assume what the other person needs. I can be grounded in the moment and put my own ego aside, because my own ego might want to say certain things that isn't going to be supportive because it's not the right time. And so I'm curious, you mentioned your boundaries and not over supporting and thinking of everyone as your brother. So what is your journey with that, and how does that show up for you, and how have you managed that?
First of all, so beautiful. And thank you for sharing, and very relatable. And for me, so specifically with my partner, when he expresses something, I will literally say do you want my opinion? Do you want my advice? Do you want to just vent? Because I'm very conscious to not step into the coach or the healer or the helper. But that took years for me to develop. And I think with the strengths piece, what's so interesting, and you really hit it on the head, I've always felt like my strengths are compassion, resilience, strength, sweetness. But I've also felt to some degree that they can be a hindrance, where sweetness, right? For years, I didn't even know what a boundary was. It was like, I will give you the shirt and a half off my back. I will run around naked for you. And no, not healthy. But I was like, if sweetness is my ingrained strength, if it's something I strongly identify with, even though we're so much more than labels, then how can I say no? How can I not give, right? And with compassion, it's that compassion fatigue. It's like I care so much that it's affecting my day to day. And with resilience, it's hand on heart, I am so grateful for how strong my heart, my mind, my body are. And it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to lean, and that coincides with strength, right? And I think I still am figuring out the balance, in full disclosure. And when those specific things happen, how I am with them is sweetness, right? Am I being sweet to myself? So if I'm not being sweet to myself, then that's not holistically sweet. If I can be sweet to myself and sweet to other, beautiful. But if I can only be sweet to one, I need to start with being sweet to myself. I can still be kind to another. I can still say my capacity to another, but I need to start with sweetness to myself. Compassion, right? What is my capacity for today, for this phone call, for my ability to be there for other and still be there for myself? Resilience, right? Am I using resilience to the greatest of degree where I get to bounce back or even bounce forward post-traumatic growth? Or am I trying to jump over or bypass or not feel and just think and talk about it from this degree, which we were talking about it earlier, rather than from my felt experience? So I think it's a constant balance for me. And it really does come with stepping back, asking myself, what do I think? What do I feel? What do I need? What do I want? Really turning that inward and then acting to the best of my ability in alignment with that, using my strengths to their greatest degree. So I'm not sure if that answered, but that's.
No, that's beautiful. And I mean, that I feel like I needed that reminder today too. It's if these are your strengths, right? If these are how you are and how you want to be seen, and really you at your best version of yourself, right? You need to first be giving those to yourself. And if you're not filling up your own cup first and like using your strengths inwardly, then how can you best do that for somebody else? Because then it's always coming from inside of your cup rather than your reserve. And I find I catch myself often when I'm not in the best, most present state that I can be for myself for whatever reason. Maybe I didn't give myself enough time that day to just be with my own thoughts or, you know, to move through something. And if I'm not in that place, I can be trying to use my strengths of like perspective, being very curious and asking questions, you know, going into these depths of conversation. Like these are the things that I find I'm really good at when I'm in a good place. If I'm trying to do those, if I'm trying to use my strengths from a place of where I'm not feeling my best, it doesn't even land for other people, right? It's like, I don't ask the right question, or I'm not actually creating a safe space and container for somebody else to share with me. So I can be trying to use my strengths, but it's not coming from the right place and a grounded place because my boundaries aren't necessarily being supportive, right? And so I think it's so important for us to think about, how are we using our strengths for ourselves as well and nurturing ourselves so that we can show up how we want to, ideally for other people.
So beautiful. And something to add to that. And, you know, I am a life coach. So it's like still life happens to me, even though life happens with me, for me, however you want to say it, even though I'm holding space for others. So I think for me, it's also like I take time to really cleanse and clear my energy, whether it's a shower, a walk, sage, and be like, okay, this is true. This is what I'm experiencing, but how can I still be there for this person? And then outside of my professional, I don't want to say requirements because it's something I'm choosing, but professional responsibilities, it's then outside of that being like, am I at capacity for this phone call right now with somebody who I love and adore, but I don't know if I could be there for them in this moment. And that's okay. And something else that has been so helpful for people that are listening that are in different compassionate caring roles and still are experiencing life. And sometimes we have beautiful days and we're there and we're able to show up exactly as we are fully. And sometimes we have more challenging days, is literally getting like a physical box. I call it a God box. You can call it a universe box, spirit box, whatever. I still question what I believe in, but I call it a God box. And anything I cannot control, I put in that box and I close it and I put it away. And you can also do this, like if I have in-person sessions, if I have a client, there's so much going on. I can literally take a box and like write down everything that you don't want to be in this session in this box, piece of paper, put in the box. We're going to put it outside the door and you can pick it up when you leave. It's there for you. You don't have to pick it up, but you can. But for now, like this is for you. And it's just compartmentalizing to the best of our ability. As an empath, it's hard, but it's available. What is here for us now? And how can I show up with everything that's going on as the best version of myself right here and now by putting those other things on the back burner, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I love that actually as a practice and as a tool. I often say like sometimes there's so many thoughts in my mind that I just need to take a sticky note and like every sticky note is just a thought. And like every sticky note is like out of my brain onto the wall or wherever.
Yeah.
And that can be so therapeutic to cleanse my mind and know that it's there and I can circle back to those and I can come back and I can journal. I can, you know, do whatever I need to do, but they're no longer clouding my mind because I have them in a space that I can go find them. And I love the idea of the box because it's like, these things are not, and especially what you said about not being in your direct control or maybe not being something that is going to serve you in that moment, right? Like how do you create a space without rejecting those thoughts or trying to push them away? It's like, this is a thought that like, I'm going to put in this box because it's not in my control, but it's okay that I'm having it. Right. And it just gets to be in this box so that it's not influencing my client conversation or my, you know, dinner with my partner or seeing my family, whatever it is, right? It doesn't get to have that same impact that it has. And I think that's so important because most of the time that we're anxious or we have, you know, we're stressed or whatever it is, it's because we're focusing on things that are outside of our control. And so being able to shift the focus on what's in my direct control, what can I do right now? And, what's something that I want to maybe surrender to and release control and release that energetic hold that it has on me. And something else, like kind of related, that I wanted to circle back on, because I think it's really important and I don't really hear so many people talk about it, but you mentioned it, is you mentioned resilience as one example, or compassionate, or kind. And it's like oftentimes we associate ourselves with these things. Like, I'm resilient, I'm compassionate, I'm kind. And anything that doesn't fit our definition of that is like a part of us that we're not as comfortable with or we reject. So it's like, I'm resilient and I'm a rock for others. Doesn't mean that you don't also get to break down and need a rock, right? It doesn't mean that you don't get to like spend a couple of extra hours in bed and just nurturing yourself. Like, it doesn't mean that you don't get to take a sick day because you're resilient and you can just push through. Like, that's not the definition. It just means that that is a strength that you know that you have, and you know that you can use, and you know that you can leverage. And you also get to experience the flip side of that.
First of all, thank you so much. And I full-heartedly needed to hear that and love to hear that. So thank you. And I think for me, I tried to practice that exact what you're sharing by saying, I can do hard things, right? No matter what happens, I know in my gut I will be okay, which is an incredible gift for me to say. And I still get to feel. I still can be upset. I can be scared. I can be sad. I can need love. I can need attention from other things outside of me, even though I know I can give them to myself, which is a phenomenal basis. But I think that's really powerful. And something with the thoughts, for people that are listening, we have 60,000 thoughts a day, right? 80% of them, I believe, are negative, and 95% of them are the same as yesterday. So thank God, first and foremost, that I don't hear all my thoughts, because I would not be able to be paying attention. And it's like when I'm working with new clients or clients who are new to this work, they're like, I have no clue what I'm saying to myself. I was like, that's great. That's great. You have a great filter, white noise, right? But it's like, okay, how am I feeling? That can inform a little bit of what am I thinking? And when we get curious about the thoughts, as you were saying, it's not about rejecting them, right? It's not about like shaming them, blaming them, shutting them out. It is about, though, putting them in a safe place where my more developed adult self, rather than my younger, sweet, caring, innocent self, can sit with them and inquire. Like we were talking about Byron Katie's work in our journey together with our coaching certification. Like, is this true, right? Is this really true? Who am I when I believe the thought? Who am I when I don't believe the thought? And what is this thought trying to get for me, through me, with me? And can I meet that need underneath the thought? And then some thoughts are not always worth revisiting, right? The intrusive thoughts, sometimes it is just giving them space. And that's all they needed, was a space to just be there on a piece of paper, in a box, outside, burning, whatever, recycling, whatever you want to do. So I think it's so interesting to really look at our thoughts and what are the ones we give attention to, and also see if it's available in that moment. Okay, this is what I'm thinking. Is there a more empowered thought that's still believable right now that I can give attention and love to?
Yeah, wow. So beautiful. And it's really interesting because I just recorded, and probably by the time the podcast is up, there'll be an audio that everyone can download that guides people through that process exactly, where it's like, addressing some of these unconscious loops and unconscious patterns, and what are some of the stories or thoughts or feelings or experiences that are underneath that, and giving it space. What does it want to say? Like, how is it trying to serve you? What is the deeper desire that's really beneath it, and how is it trying to protect you? Giving it the mic, but then also lovingly knowing that that doesn't have to guide you. And so what is that new empowering thought and that empowering loop and new conscious behaviors and thought patterns that come from that place and that more empowered, intentional space? And so that leads us perfectly into this next question that I would love to ask you is, what are some of your unconscious loops or patterns that you've really worked throughout the years to bring into awareness, rewrite, and are now in a more conscious loop? And I'm sure I want to make the distinction that being in a conscious loop doesn't always mean that it's just easy and perfect and you're now in this is your new state. It is exactly what it is. It's a conscious loop. It's a conscious, action and thoughts and feelings and behaviors that really come from that. But the main part of it that I think is really important is that you're making the unconscious conscious and getting out of that old unconscious loop and into a more empowering one. So I would love to hear, one or two from your journey that have been the ones that have guided you to where you are today.
I love this question. And so I would say the two primary unconscious loops that I consciously choose to make more loving most days are one, that I have to do it alone, or that I'm all alone. And two, I don't know how to receive support. And so the first one, right, I have to do it all alone, or that I'm all alone. I know I mentioned this in the beginning. I come from a beautiful family with a lot of love. And my brother has different needs. My dad passed in 2019, and my mom also has health challenges. So in that nuclear family, there's a part of me that still, there's a lot of love and special and warmth there, but feels very alone, that I don't have the person to talk to. And the conscious reframe of that has given me so many gifts in being able to go out and create community within my nonprofit and my business, have incredible best friendships like that are so loving and so healthy and so amazing, that because of maybe what was not always available, that gap, right? As Jay Shetty, gaps and gifts, I created the gift of being able to form really nurturing relationships and have really rock solid foundation. So the loop is not, I'm doing it alone or I have to do it alone. It's, I do have support, and it may look different than other people's support, but I do have support. And also I have a desire to connect with higher power. And in this moment, I don't know what I believe in. And I struggle with allowing whatever's above in to feel that like I can lean back. But I know that part of my conscious development is really tuning into the support that's around me, that's beyond me, that's not just me. And then also viewing all the memories from the past where that was always present, where I did have support and I am supported and I am loved. So that's that. And then I don't know how to receive, right? I think that in many ways, I can still get into that, but also like I lived with a pseudo family for 5 years who opened their home, heart, and family to me. I went back to college in the sense that I didn't even have to reapply. They opened their doors to me. I didn't have any place to live. Within 24 hours, I had a place to live. I had somebody delivering a mattress and I was looking for a job, and I got into classes even though classes were already closed and school had already started. Like there's so much in my experience where I did receive, where it did align. And so I think, again, the conscious upgrade of I don't know how to receive is I have received and I'm learning how to continue to receive, or I'm open to receive. And I just had a conversation about this with my partner this morning, which we were speaking about earlier, where like he was saying, like, I want to be there for you. I want to support you. I want you to receive. And we were even talking about, I don't know if you heard the book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, but he's like, I want to get one for you. And I was like, I'd love to do it together to like get two. And I was like, no, don't get it. And I was like, Danny, receive. Like, thank you. Right. And it's just, even in the moment when it gets kicked up, I get to reframe and choose, because there's two loops, right? I can continue down the unconscious or continue down the programming. It's not me, it's the programming. Or I can choose that empowered conscious loop where it's like, no, old story, I don't know how to receive. Old story, I don't feel supported. New story is, first of all, I've been able to receive. I have been supported, and I get to continue along that way. So I love that. And that's so present with my present day.
Wow. And thank you for sharing the ways in which it shows up for you and still continues to show up, right? Because it's not just like this overnight thing. And I think there's a common misconception, or maybe just something that's not talked about often enough. It's like we see somebody before and we see somebody after a major shift and a major change. And we go, wow, like, look at how they've grown. Look at that change. But we don't see that transition phase or the work that goes into really making that shift. And so it's so refreshing to also know that it's a daily thing. It's a daily choice. It's not just something that changes. It is really the act of making a conscious decision, really addressing and looking at your thoughts and recognizing how that impacts how you're showing up. Because, you know, if you were to go into that more unconscious loop, or maybe the programming of I am alone, how then are you showing up in those moments that you feel that way? Like, how does your behavior change feeding that thought versus feeding I'm not alone, or I can't receive support versus I can receive support? Then how does your behavior change in that same scenario, just based on how you look at it?
Yeah, beautiful question. And I would love to answer the question and first just reflect on how powerful what you were sharing it is to see people in that messy middle, in that transition. And even for me, like I do share very vulnerably on my Instagram, I share things, right? And still a lot of it is what I have experienced, but I'm no longer in. And something I wholeheartedly want to share is my life is not perfect and it will never be perfect. And it is beautiful and amazing and something I am creating on the day to day. And I still have really hard days. I still have really happy, wild, amazing days. And I also still have sad days, and that's okay. So like, no matter who is listening, no matter what you're viewing, I think everyone's going through things, whether they're at the start of it, the end of it, the middle of it, like everyone's going through stuff. And as for the question of, I am now losing thought, what was the question? Or how does it show up when I listen to one thought or the other? Beautiful. So when I listen to the thought, I'm alone, right? I feel alone. I start grieving. I grieve my dad. I grieve my mom. I grieve my brother. I grieve the experiences I felt that I did or did not have. And I get very sad and I get heavy hearted. Where when I tap into the belief of I'm not alone, or I'm supported, or I have beautiful people, I can literally make a list of like best friends that I have that I could call, that I could cry to, that I could be raw to, that I could be real with. And people that inspire me, that have such wisdom and light and love and different perspectives. And I have friends not only in this country, but all over the world. And how magnificent that is. And the depth of those friendships is not like, we're just going to sit here and talk about Joe Schmo. We're going to sit here and we're going to talk about our hearts and our goals and our vulnerabilities. Literally, one of my best friends yesterday, I was explaining to her like about the feeling of being alone. And she had texted me and she was like, her name is Kayla, shout out Kayla Murphy, incredible human. And so she was texting me. She's like, I wish we could just like sit on the couch and have tea and Thai food and talk about how crazy life is or how wild life is. And I was like, yes, like that is my love language. And how grateful am I to have that? So it is so wild how one thought can literally embodied shapes make me coil and hide and feel small and feel alone. And then I could talk about the people and the places that light me up and I feel empowered and alive. And I think something else that's coming into conversation now in the coaching space, therapy space is somatics, right? Is the nervous system. And like beyond what am I telling myself, do I feel safe? And the two are very connected. So for me, it is taking time and space to take those deep breaths, because when we breathe in and our belly and body expand and we have breath below the diaphragm rather than in the heart center like that, it signifies that I'm safe. And if I'm safe, I have choice. And if I have choice, then I can hear, what are my choices? What am I choosing? What are my thoughts? What am I choosing? And how can I nurture in to the more conscious loop? But if I'm in this frantic fight or flight, go, survival, basic needs, in my experience, it's a little bit harder for me to choose the conscious loop without first being in that like regulated or semi-regulated nervous system.
Yeah, that's so important. And I mean, it's something I'm bringing more awareness into my daily life too, is just how my breath and how I'm breathing has such an impact on everything. It's almost wild and it feels, if I were to say it, untrue, like the change that happens when I just do 5 minutes of deep breathing. I'm like, how did I just accomplish more than I probably could have in like 2 therapy sessions just because I took a breath? So imagine now that with therapy, there's such a compounding effect. Just breathe. It's something that's available to you. So I constantly am reminding myself of that. And one thing that you said, and I really want to bring awareness to this as well, is the thoughts that you're choosing to feed, right? And really experience life through have such an impact on everything, how we view the past, how we experience the present, how we view the future. And it's, in what you were sharing about your past, nothing about the past had changed. It was just, what lens were you looking through? Were you looking at through the lens of I am alone? Or were you looking through the lens of I have amazing community and people around me? Depending on which lens you're looking through, you're going to remember and experience the past in that way. And you're going to then project the future in that same way. So nothing changes other than the lens that you're looking through and the thought that you're feeding in that moment to experience life and experience that, because you did that. Like, that power was within you, right? Whether you fed that unconscious loop or that new conscious loop, that was all you. And we all hold that power within us. It is within us to create that experience for ourselves. Like, I saw how your body changed as you even spoke about the two different loops, right? Like, you were like,
yeah,
this is
wild, right? Yeah.
yeah. And it's like, you did that. Everyone saw that. Like, nobody, like, nothing about her future, present, or past changed. The only thing that changed, and this is something that, I hope everyone can take from this, is the only thing that changes is what thought are you feeding? What lens are you looking through? How are you choosing to experience the present moment and projecting that onto what's available to you in the future? And so, yeah, just thank you for sharing that story so much, because it's such a great example of how it shows up for you. And I'm sure many people, I know myself, can resonate with that.
Thank you.
And I know we're coming to time. I could talk forever with you, but, I wanted to give you the opportunity to share. You have such amazing techniques and tools that I've seen you use on yourself, you use with clients. Like, you're so generous with everything that you give online as well. So I'll make sure to include some resources in the show notes for everyone. And, my question for you is, how do you, when you think about this, like bridging the woo-woo and the real world, right? How do you bridge those two? And like, what are some tools or techniques that someone here can really take away and implement right away for themselves?
So first of all, I love that question, because I feel as though I practice grounded spirituality, and I've been in the pendulum of different arenas of it. And for those who are unaware of who I am and a little bit of my background, in 2019, I had literally a bald head and was in India meditating. So I've done the woo-woo. And I think for me, the beauty of any and every spiritual practice is applying it to the real world, quote unquote, real world, whatever your real world looks like, right? But it's like, yeah, I can go meditate in a monastery and be away from any trigger and find my breath. But what happens when that hiccup of I feel alone comes up, right? How do I be with that? So how I bridge the woo-woo and the mainstream is I bring breath, mindfulness, and compassion to life. So when something happens, right? When there's that hiccup of like, I don't know how to receive, or I feel like I can't receive, it's like, okay, hand on heart, find my breath. Inhale, belly, body, expand. Exhale, belly, body, release, relax, soften. In this exact moment, mindfulness, right? Like you were saying, not changing the past, not changing the future, being right here in this exact second of a moment, right? What is true? What is here? What is now? And then compassion. Compassion, I mean, they call it metta in Buddhism, is such a beautiful practice where first self-compassion, looking at myself, seeing everything that I've been through, that I've risen above, that I've overcome, and knowing that no matter what happens today, I see my heart, I see my human, I see my soul. And then compassion for other, where no matter what this person is feeling, thinking, believing, or acting, he, she, they are literally just trying to protect or to love. And that's all they're trying to do. And, with aloneness, I think something that really has become heightened is feeling alone for me, I think really helped me develop my empathy and my desire to connect with others because I felt alone and desire to pick up the energy of others, right? And I think also the feeling of aloneness may tap in for some to more of that narcissism in the way of like, it's too painful to connect because it's too painful to feel like I don't have any connection. So I want to shut that ability for empathy. And that gives me so much empathy for the people. And I'm not here to be a diagnostician and say who's like a narcissist or not. That's not my zone of love, genius, world peace right now. It's to say, like, when I see somebody who's practicing more selfish tendencies or doesn't feel to get it or feel for what I'm going through, I have compassion that they're at capacity and that they can't feel how painful it is to connect with what's going on inside. So I think that's really how I bring the woo-woo to the mainstream. And notice, like I still even said, I don't know what I believe in higher power-wise. There have been times where I felt super tuned in. I had premonitions that would blow your mind, and it happened. And there are other times where I'm like, oh, what the heck is up there? It's just me and me, right? So, but it's like, yeah, those are the grounded ways. And I think the higher elevation way is to make space to see the magic and to inquire about, like, if there is God, spirit, universe, how do I already know that? How do I already feel that? And how can I already lean into that? That would be my invitation or invitations.
Love that. So beautiful. And especially the magic aspect of like, how can you tune into the magic that is just available around you all the time and also within you, right? Like, I think we often seek answers outside of ourselves. And I know we've had this conversation so many times, like you're so good at seeking them within yourself. And sometimes it's allowing the support to come from external. And I think another common thing that other people, might experience is the opposite, where we want to outsource those things. And it's like knowing that it's all available within us. And I love the compassion piece of self-compassion and compassion for others, because so often we're triggered by other people and it's because we're taking it personally. But if we can just remember, like, compassion, send love, it's a place of pain, it's a place of hurt, it's like their own inner dialogue, that just allows us to take responsibility for the thing that we have control over. And we are co-creators of every experience. So focusing on taking the responsibility for what you have control over and what you have power over, and sending love to the rest.
Yeah, I love that. And I live that. And, sometimes I fall off the wagon, but when I get back in and on, right, it's so true. It's so true. And yeah, it's such a beautiful gift to be able to look at the world in that conscious way. So I thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It was such a blessing.
You.
So beautiful to have you here on the show. We'll definitely have to have you here again. I'm sending you so much love for the rest of your week. And yeah, just big thank you.
Thank you so much. And you are absolutely incredible. I enjoyed every second of this, and just the listeners are so lucky to be in your space and your energy, because you are like electric and it's so powerful. So thank you.
Like what you heard and want more? Stay connected with our community on social media using the links below. Like us on your favorite podcast provider and sign up for the Conscious Loop newsletter, where we only send you goodies with one intent: to break your unconscious loops. If you have an unconscious loop you want to break free from, let us know so we can feature that loop on the show. Info and show notes, and we'll see you next time in the Conscious Loop.